Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome back. I hope your week has been absolutely outstanding. We have a great live stream planned today. Going back to Fulton County and the criminal investigation that's happening there, we've got Nathan Wade, who got a subpoena, who's supposed to be testifying this Friday. We're looking forward to seeing what he has to say if he shows up. But we're going to go through some of the theories that are now out there after the affidavit was unsealed yesterday. Of course, a big raid occurred. Criminal investigation being unleashed now in Fulton County. And some reaction to that because now Rob Pitts, the commissioner, is also referring other states warnings saying that they may be coming for you since they came for us here in Fannyland. So we'll go through that. We also want to revisit the declaration that we were looking at yesterday, that massive document that had all the ballot images and a lot of details that we think are the foundation for this criminal investigation. I want to explore some of those theories to see exactly how this went down. If they rigged the votes on election day, then they came back and did a couple of additional audits, where was the fraud? It can be very confusing, especially when they keep coming out and saying it was all baseless. There's no evidence of anything bad that happened ever. But the story goes deeper than that. So we'll be here. We'll go through the document. We'll try to piece it all together and then get reaction from 11 Alive News in Fulton County and check out what Congress is up to as it pertains to the SAVE Act. Then we've got some Jack Smith news also. The corrupt former prosecutor, the illegitimate U.S. attorney who was never a U.S. attorney, prosecuting the president, is now being probed. We've got a Senator, Bill Hagerty, who is demanding answers on this. And we also had that come up today. Pam Bondi was in Congress. We had some testimony about this yesterday. Senators are furious, and Jack Smith is not out of the weeds yet. So it's going to be a beautiful stream. We're very glad that you're here and with us. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. We look forward to seeing you. And hopefully we never miss you again on another show. We're glad that you're here. But now that the tubes are warmed up, let's get into the business on the day, starting in Fulton County. The criminal investigation into Fulton County continues. Kash Patel saying, we're looking into violations of federal law, saying the warrant execution in Fulton involves an FBI criminal investigation examining whether any alleged electoral improprieties that were involved in 2020 contained intentional acts that violated federal criminal law. And this is the crux of this entire conversation. What evidence is there of intent? Because, of course, Fulton County, Brad Raffensperger, Nathan Wade, all of these people are just going to point back to any errors and just say, oh, it's just oversight, or it's just some human mistake that was made by some poll worker somewhere, and it's not a big conspiracy of election fraud. Obviously, we know that is not the explanation. Very simple for them to constantly say baseless and there's no evidence and courts have dismissed it. But when you look into the documents, as we're going to do today, we'll see that in this declaration of Philip B. Stark, a very intelligent person, he's going to help connect the dots to us. And we also have the Georgia Senate and Lieutenant Governor who are digging into this. Nathan Wade, Fannie Willis's lover and disqualified prosecutor, must come and testify before the Senate panel. We know that a subpoena went out, but that subpoena is for this Friday, and Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones is now escalating the investigation, saying he better come in here and answer our questions. And he, of course, is over on X, and he posted a video about all this saying, you know, Fannie Willis's story didn't match her boyfriend's testimony. Not at all. And so we've subpoenaed her boyfriend, Nathan, to appear before our Senate committee next Friday, Burt Jones, so we can determine who is telling the truth. Now, they've already wasted millions of taxpayer dollars, and we need to get to the bottom of this prosecutorial misconduct. And of course, the prosecution was really to cover up the theft of the election and to use the investigation of the theft as an attack vector to disqualify their political opponent. They brought Trump down. They took his mugshot in this county. And now Burt Jones is saying, we're not done yet. Nathan Wade is going to bring his booty down here, and we're going to hopefully hear from him this Friday.
Hey everybody, Burt Jones here. Last month we had Fonnie Willis come before a Senate committee to testify for the charade that she put on for over 3 years, where she indicted 19 innocent people, including the President of the United States.
Yep.
Her story didn't quite match up with what her boyfriend testified to before a congressional hearing just a year ago. We've subpoenaed her boyfriend, Nathan Wade, to come before our Senate committee next Friday, Friday the 13th. And we're going to find out who's actually telling the truth. Either way, we know they wasted time and effort and wasted millions of dollars of taxpayer money. And we would need to get to the bottom of it.
And after the warrant was unsealed, the affidavit, we got a bunch of theories out there saying, oh, we've all heard this before. I've read a bunch of articles, so you don't have to, from CNN and elsewhere, saying all of this is just regurgitated and rehashed. And Brad Raffensperger came out, the Secretary of State, and the guy who was running a lot of these investigations, said, as Secretary of State, Brad, I've made Georgia the safest and most secure place to vote. Instead of wasting time and taxpayer dollars to change the past with baseless and repackaged claims, let's focus our efforts on building a safer and more affordable future for all hardworking Georgians. Wow, that's so beautiful. Actually, no, we're not going to let go of this, because if we don't have fair elections, then we're not governing ourselves at all, and we're just slaves. But this, of course, I think, reveals the truth. Let's just move on. That's what everybody wants to do. Forget about it. And largely, that's how these things function. As long as you can just keep kicking the can down the road, you've got John Brennan, James Comey, John Clapper, all of them just kind of watching the clock tick down until their statute of limitations expire and until they're out of the weeds. But, of course, a lot of pushback on Raffensperger. And one of the other dumb claims that's out there after this was all unsealed is this point. Someone said, well, actually, in November 2020, you didn't have to keep the scanned ballot images, which is a major crux of the theory that we're going to unpack today, how the fraud occurred. At what point were the ballots inserted, or at what point were the digital transfers happening that inflated the numbers? They say, well, you don't even have to hold on to the ballot images, so who cares if they all got deleted to cover up the crime? Well, this guy, Kevin Moncla, you know who he is. He's been digging in on this for a long time and filed in many locations saying election investigator and consultant has an answer to this. He said, no, actually, okay, in 2020, both Georgia law and U.S. law required ballot images to be preserved. And this is a big problem. If they don't have the ballot images, how can we account for any digital inflation of the votes? Remember, in Georgia, you go in, scan your ballot, it prints out a QR code. You take that QR code, scan the QR code. That's supposed to tally the votes. But if you don't have an image of the ballot that's saved, you can't reconcile the two. So if you have them all deleted, that means you can't backtrace the fraud. So if that were not enough or somehow unclear, we've got two laws, Georgia law and U.S. law, say preserve the ballots. Then the Secretary of State, the state election board, they adopted a whole rule on this. On January 23rd, 2020, they made it crystal clear that as of February 12, 2020, right before the November election, you got to save the ballot images. Otherwise, you're in violation of the law and you're covering up for fraud. You cannot validly audit this, which is why we had to do multiple audits, as we'll see. The law said, the rule said, quote, after tabulating and consolidating the results, the election superintendent shall, it says shall, not may, prepare an electronic file which shall contain a copy of the information contained on each memory card, which shall include all ballot images, as well as the vote totals and a copy of the consolidated returns from the election management system. That's the rule. It's right there, signed off on by everybody. Saying here, or that's a copy of the motion. He explains, it is very unequivocal. You also shall store this on a secure medium placed in a sealed envelope or container and shall become part of the election materials, which all should be deposited with the clerk of the court and the signed results tape and all of the other things deposited. Now, any remaining doubt should be put to rest because there was also an amicus brief filed by the current lawyer called Charlene McGowan on behalf of the Secretary of State, which is this document right here, which says that ballots are then scanned through optical voting scanners, selected and furnished under Georgia law. Once scanned, an electronic ballot image is created and stored on a memory card. After the election, County officials must deliver all ballots and ballot images so you can reconcile the reported vote with the ballot. Seems pretty obvious. All of it has to be in sealed containers and all of it to be held for 24 months. Now, of course, we know there were lawsuits everywhere, so they actually preserve these for longer than 24 months. But this is the signature page of that filing he's referencing. Even the assistant AG, Charlene, is confirming you have to have the ballot images. And why is this such a big problem? Well, because you can't reconcile the two. And other people who've been involved in this and victims of this, guys like David Schaefer, said about Fulton County, it is undisputed that votes were miscounted. Undisputed, it's in the record, it's clear. It is also undisputed that election records were not maintained as required by law. The only outstanding question, which is why we're spending time on this, is about intent and the lengths to which they have been concealed and denied and whether those are crimes. Garland Favorito, of course, saying the same. And so we had massive amounts of documents that were all submitted in the context of the 2020 challenges. And I want to go back down and take a look at this one, the Declaration of Philip B. Stark. And this is 364 pages. We were scrolling through this yesterday. It's a massive document, and you can see tons of stuff in here, including ballot images. And we spent some time on this yesterday just showing you that you can go and download these records and compare and contrast them and then match them up and say, oh, well, that's weird. We've got duplicate ballots or triplicate ballots that have all been scanned. And I put some of this stuff into AI and I was having some conversations with it and wanted to share with you what we found. So I threw this into Gemini, asking some questions saying, hey, how could this thing work in theory? Because we don't know everything that the DOJ knows. We got an FBI agent who wrote an affidavit. We've got a bunch of other individuals filing lawsuits all over the place. But what is the theory of the case that the DOJ might be working on? What has Tulsi Gabbard and Kurt Olson received from these intelligence agencies that might show how this whole thing went down? And so let me share this with you briefly about the couple of different steps that may have been taken to create this fraud. Now, the Stark report, we're going to go back and read that. That was the report from Philip Stark. So we added that and the actual unsealed affidavit, and we're gaming this out. How could the fraud have occurred? So put your Fulton County fraudster cap on and think, how are we going to steal this election? Here's one way to do it. First of all, in Georgia's system, voters make selections on a touchscreen. We talked about this a lot. It's called a ballot marking device. You go in there, bop, 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 bop. Then it prints a paper ballot. On that, you get a human readable summary of what you voted, and you get a QR code. The tabulator, the scanner, counts the vote by reading the QR code. Okay, so what is on the report? It says you voted for Trump, you voted for Republican, Republican, Republican. QR code gets printed. You presume they match, but you can't read a QR code, so you don't really know. So what happens now, and this might be why Tulsi Gabbard is there, is the QR code might flip. You might have some fraud in the software. You might have a problem with the software that is actually translating the data, and you would never know. You'd think, oh, I voted, my ballot got accepted perfectly well, no problem. Now, in the Stark report, he gives us evidence of this. We're going to look at it in detail, but we want to go high level right now. Paragraph 30, he says, the follow-up audits did not even check this, whether the QR code was encoding the votes and whether they matched. He says the discrepancies of the original machine count and the audit might be because of this. It could be misconfiguration. We've seen this in Arizona. Remember, they misconfigured the whole election during Kari Lake's election, where the ballot paper sizes were just off and they couldn't be accepted. And then you had to have lines out the door, people trying to get in to vote, but the machines were not accepting the ballots. And so everybody had to put them in the extra drop box. All misconfiguration. And then Bill Onesie Twosie Gates here in Maricopa County was like, well, just a couple little problems, I figured it out. And all of it was just idiocy, essentially. No one was doing anything fraudulently. No one was trying to delay the day of votes, which were overwhelming for Kari Lake. It's just oops, sorry, we screwed up. Whole election went in our favor, but we didn't do anything intentionally wrong, okay? So the QR code to the ballot reporting could have been a problem. We also know that Venezuela's basically CIA chief, is in custody right now. He wrote a letter to President Trump saying, yeah, they're doing this stuff in all of the ballot marking devices for all of the equipment all over the planet. That's just how it could have happened on election night. Okay, so now we have this concept where we have an inflated number of votes that came in on election night or the days following. So the election is stolen. How do we prove it? How do we disprove it? We have some recounts. Now, this is another important theory. Duplicate scanning. Physical ballots and batches of ballots are run through the scanner more than once. There's a bunch of evidence that this exists. So then they have to backfill the inflated votes. Okay, on election day, you just inflate the votes. You have rigged systems, however that works. Then during the recounts, you have to backfill those votes. Joe Biden gets inflated votes. How do you then close the gap between the actual votes and your inflated votes? You have to double or triple scan the ballots. Do we have evidence of that? Of course we do. The most heavily supported theory is that they're running the ballots through more than once. And he has all of the ballots in his declaration, saying there is ample evidence that thousands of bogus votes were put through the machine. He identified specific examples that we'll look at, and at least 7 hand-marked paper ballots were scanned 3 times. That coffee stain conversation we had yesterday on 3 ballots, contributing 29 votes to some of the contests. He also notes that there are separate batches that were scanned 5 minutes apart from each other that were the exact same ballots. So 214 ballots were scanned. 5 minutes later, scanned again, all in the records. Now, additionally, we then have to make the numbers match. The election management system reported a high number of votes, 528,000. But the physical evidence, the physical ballots, didn't match the reported votes. He says there's a massive discrepancy in here because tons of images are missing. And so if you have a digital inflation during the election day, you have to fill that up with the pristine ballots that we've talked about yesterday. Pristine ballots come in, shows that there is no real explanation for where they came from, and walks us through it right here in the double scan verification section. A machine recount is ultimately requested. Of course, the machines need to produce a same number of votes, right? When you do the recount, should reconcile. But instead, we have a double counting. Stark, in his analysis, said batch 43 is scanned. Then 5 minutes later, batch 44 is scanned, 214 ballots. Sets of hand-marked ballots that were scanned 3 times. And he says at least that he identified 891 hand-marked ballots that were duplicates or triplicates. So the pristine ballots are shoved in to backfill to create, there's a margin between the reported votes and the ballots. So they backfill that to say, oh, look, we just scanned them a bunch of times, and then the numbers suddenly reconcile. So the catching of the fraud is happening during the recounts as they're trying to make their numbers valid. It's like a digital backfill to put in physical ballots to make up for the digital differences. Okay, and this is just, broad numbers, broad overview, but let's zoom in from the declaration. Now that the search warrant has been unsealed, a lot of this is starting to make a lot more sense. And this came out from a very intelligent person called Philip B. Stark. And the lawsuit was taking place some time ago. It's Donna Curling versus Brad Raffensperger, the current Secretary of State. And he says, I am now supplementing my prior claims. And here's what he writes. I'm a professor at Berkeley, also a faculty member, and I do a bunch of things for data science at Berkeley. Very smart. I have published more than 200 articles and books, applied mathematics. I am extremely impressive. I'm a fellow of statistics. I am even a part of the Royal Astronomical Society. That's how smart I am. Now, I've consulted with government agencies, DOJ, Agriculture, Commerce, or Housing and Urban Development. I've testified before the House of Representatives. I've been an expert witness or non-testifying expert in a ton of different cases. And I've been qualified by a number of courts, District of California, Georgia, Maryland, and more. I'm an expert on statistics in state courts. I've used statistics to address a wide range of questions in various fields. I also invented a statistical approach to auditing elections. Okay, this guy invented a function. Now, this is a risk-limiting audit. I invented it. My election auditing methods have been used in roughly 20 U.S. states and Denmark. These are widely viewed as the best way to check an election to see whether they're really won. It's been endorsed by a bunch of people. I've worked everywhere. Testified in California. The dude is a badass. So here's what I have determined. I have been asked to assess whether the state of Georgia and their current Dominion ballot marking device system with the QR codes, including the audits, after my analysis, I need to determine, did this report give reasonable assurance that the voters and their selections will be counted? Does your vote count? Answer is a clear no. Here's what happened. Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, has claimed, referring to his post-election audit of the 2020 election, he said, Georgia's historic first statewide audit is what they're saying. Audits were perfect and no court of law found whatever. He said it reaffirmed that the state's new secure ballot voting system accurately counted and reported the votes. And we did a 100% risk limiting audit. We did a hand recount. It proved the accuracy of all the things, and no votes were flipped. Voting Works also claimed that Georgia's first statewide audit successfully confirmed the winner, and that the audit confirmed Joe Biden won the state of Georgia. He says, I shall explain right now, very smart guy from Berkeley, saying why these claims about the audit are false and why the audits were actually where a lot of the fraud was occurring to cover up for the fraud on election night. He says, first of all, the audit didn't check a bunch of things. And the thing that it was positioned to check, it was supposed to check the tabulation of validly cast ballots. It was not checked properly at all. Just look at the data, which he attached in here, which is 364 pages. He says, I'm going to start by listing some things the audit did not check. My statements are true and correct to the best of my knowledge and consistent with the audit documentation, which you can go get on the website. First of all, the audit did not check whether the BMDs correctly printed the selections. Say, from the QR code and your selection of your election choices can't validate that they actually match your choices. No audit can check that. So, since they couldn't validate that because it happened on the fly for every single ballot that came through, they then turned around and made it up. He can't say that no votes were flipped because he can't know that. You scanned it, the software printed the QR code, you can't match those. Now, the declarations of other people, including Professor Halderman, they established that these devices can be hacked, they can be misprogrammed, they can be misprinted to print votes different from the selections. And other people have also elaborated that only voters are in a position to check, but few do. And to the best of my knowledge, there are no procedures in place in Georgia to even log or to investigate or to even report complaints from this. So it's not clear that any voters even noticed any problems, or if they did, they couldn't report it. Similarly, the audit also did not check whether every validly cast ballot was scanned exactly once. Duplicate ballots. They could not check this because Georgia rules for this are not adequate to say that this needs to be done. The audit also did not even check whether every memory card that was used in the election was accounted for, nor whether every memory card containing votes was even uploaded. The audit found that some had not been uploaded, but to my knowledge, there's been no check to confirm anything is outstanding. Never checked in the audit whether any scans were duplicated, deleted, or replaced. The audit did not check whether the QR code encoding the votes made any matches of the actual ballots. Similarly, never checked whether any of the systems correctly interpreted the ballots, and so Raffensperger has no basis to claim that no votes were flipped. Now, the audit did not do a very good job of checking the tabulation, as I'll show you. I'm going to focus on Fulton County. I've not investigated the other counties because I have no reason to believe the problems and errors are confined here. I've been told by others that it's also happening there, but I'm only checking Fulton. So he says, I downloaded the audit spreadsheet. You can go over here to the secretaryofstate.gov site, download it. I also downloaded images of the manual tabulation batch sheets called the Audit Board Batch Sheets, the ABBSs, henceforth. My understanding is that these ABBSs, these sheets are filled in by hand and by the counting teams who counted the votes from the paper ballots, including from the printouts. Each document reflects the manual tally of the votes. Now, I understand that after these were filled out, other workers then transcribe the data from the sheet that they handwrite into the software called Arlo, and that every ballot validly cast should be reflected in exactly one ABBS sheet. And data from all of this should have been exactly entered one time to make, and this is critical so you don't have duplicates. Now, the 4 images that have these contain 349 pages, 636 pages, 578, and 364. We have a total of 1927 of these documents, but the audit contains only 1916 of those. So it appears that at least 11 of these are entirely missing, not counting the duplicates. This sort of sanity check is very simple to perform, but the auditors didn't do it. The county didn't do it. The Secretary of State never did it. And many of these were not even completely filled in. The batch type signifying the mode of the vote was blank. Many numbers were blank, presumably intended to denote 0. So we've identified at least 11 of these that don't appear in the spreadsheet. I verified the work, and the following table lists some of these examples about how problematic their data is. Now, I searched the spreadsheet for tallies, and there are data that matches various rows, but as you can see, the original tabulation showed 524, the audit showed 525,000, a difference of about 0.12%. Now, accounting for those omitted ABBs increases the apparent error up to 4,500 or 0.87%, which is far larger than the statewide margin of victory. Far larger than the statewide margin of victory. You can't validate the numbers. And if you extrapolate that out from Fulton County, this is in Fulton. If it's going on to other counties, it's much bigger than anyone knows. Now, there is no way to know whether including these would make the audit tabulation a complete count. Why? Because Georgia's canvas is inadequate. Many ballots might still be untabulated, and other jurisdictions are not keeping track of anything. And the governor himself even pointed out these flaws. He said that the audit report was sloppy, inconsistent. It presents questions about what processes were used by Fulton County to arrive at the results. Governor Kemp, in his letter that we looked at here, said that they didn't audit data and that it did include duplicated entries. He says, I'm just accepting his word for that. I'm not verifying the findings. Now, I understand that Donna Curling votes in Fulton County. So on January 10th, I downloaded the precinct level reports to examine that precinct. The following table shows the counts of election day voting in Fulton County for 3 candidates according to the original machine. There are large unexplained differences among these results. There appears to be some cancellation of error, but I understand that the hand count kept the ballots cast in different ways. The secretary said all of these were just human error. Oh no. Citing a study saying that error could be as high as 2%. He says that's true. Yeah, there is some human error there, but there is no evidence that it accounts for most of this difference. You can't just say, oops, we're idiots and don't know how to count. The original count and the audit agree with each other about the number of election day votes. The audit found 50 more election day votes for Trump than the original tally and 81 more than the machine found, a difference of almost 50%. So these differences have not been investigated, not been explained. A 2% error rate doesn't validate those findings. Another fact central to this case is the differences might result from discrepancies between the QR codes and the human readable votes on the printouts. And as discussed, the audit checked none of this. There is no basis to conclude that the differences here are from human error. It's much deeper than that. The hand count could easily be more accurate if they did it right, but evidence that hand counts are more accurate comes from other reports, and error rates are well known. Raffensperger was citing other studies with very limited data, 108 subjects, 120 ballots. And so it's not even a reasonable report to compare and contrast this to. Differences between the original counts and the machine recounts are also large and unexplained. The difference between the 2 machine counts of Biden's absentee vote is almost 3%. Absent access to the physical ballots, to the software, and to the equipment, it is impossible to know what went wrong and where, nor whether the difference are attributable to malware, bugs, misconfiguration, or human error. Now, I examined the internal consistency of the 2 machine counts, the original machine and the recount. I relied on electronic data and election data provided by the coalition plaintiffs who he's helping. I understand those data to be the election management data from two different machines. So I analyzed this, I wrote some software, and I attached it all to Appendix 6. And I'll describe it below. Now, I received this data from the plaintiffs, and I confirmed that I was reading it correctly. I counted the votes for Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and Joe Jorgensen. I found the same totals for both machines officially reported for Fulton County as follows. Trump, you can see here, Biden's numbers actually went down a little bit on the second machine count, and Joe Jorgensen also changing numbers just a little bit. The number of cast votes in the two machines were rather different. 528,776, and in the first count, and 527 in a second count, a difference of 851. No one can explain that discrepancy or what happened to the ballots. Now, the number of cast votes should be equal. Differences might occur if printouts were misplaced or malware, bugs, stuff could be deleted. Fulton County may not have validly scanned everything, but I can't tell. Without further discovery, it's impossible to rule out any possible changes. Now, also, Fulton did not produce the image file corresponding to every vote cast. For the first machine, production included images of the ballots for only 168,000 of the 528,000 cast. 376,000 image files were missing. Can't correlate them. For the second machine count, Fulton County's production did include ballots and printouts for 510,000, meaning another 17,000 image files are missing. And what was the margin of error there in Fulton? Or in Georgia, total 11,700 votes. Entire batches of images are missing from Fulton County. For example, images from scanner 801, batch 117, scanner 801, batch 118 are referred to in the vote records for the second machine, but there are no images. And so we don't know why these images are missing. Is it just human error? Is it a programming bug? Is it malware? Or is it intentional fraud? Now, it's nonetheless possible to use the produced images to show that the results included many votes more than once in the reported tabs. The full extent of this multiple counting problem cannot be determined without additional discovery. Fortunately, we've got the ballots now. There is ample evidence that it added thousands of bogus votes to the reported machine count results. That is, thousands of Fulton County voters' votes were included in the reported totals more than once. From the production so far, it is not possible to determine conclusively whether votes were omitted. Now, I now describe how I established that they were included more than once. Repeatedly scanning the same piece of paper generally does not produce images that are bitwise identical, but are variations because of variations of the alignment of the scanned image. Small variations in voters' marks can be identified, not generally possible to tell whether two scans are the same piece of paper, but if both scans contain a rare write-in name or a coffee stain, or you write in, Rob Gouveia for Fulton County DA, that's unusual. So if you see that in there multiple times, you say, oh, looks like it's the same ballot. Similarly, if a series of votes is repeated in the same order in a different scan, we can match them up. Now, I looked into that, and there were pairs of images are listed in the table below. The formats of the numbers look like that. So I wrote a program to display images of ballots side by side. I can see whether they look alike. We've identified at least 3 cards from one precinct that appear to have been scanned twice in a machine recount. And again, just like we were talking about, if you have digital inflation of votes on election day, you need to account for those. So during a recount, you have to keep scanning the ballots until you match those inflated numbers. You added in a bunch of fake votes somehow on election day. You got to backfill that. In particular, these batches, 43 and 44, both comprise scans of advanced in-person printout cards starting with these images. 2 batches were scanned within about 5 minutes of each other, according to the timestamps in the images. Many of the images show write-in votes for third-party candidates. These are not coincidental. I visually inspected all 214 pairs and confirmed they matched. There is compelling evidence that those cards were scanned twice. The other 211 are duplicated scans of other BMD cards. So they've identified a bunch, or at least one hand-marked paper ballot that was scanned twice. And I used the software and I confirmed that as well. So to confirm that duplicate and triplicate images were included, I searched the cast-wide vote records and looked at them. All 24 from the original count and all 29 from the machine count were included. So I conclude that duplicate and triplicate votes were included in the reported machine tabulations. And they're just going to turn around and say, oh no, it's all just a mistake. We're just morons and we just keep scanning ballots over and over. 916 of the 2871 sets of images were identified as hand-marked paper ballots. So I drew a random sample of 100 and ran it through some software. Of the 100 sets, 46, okay, so 46 of 100 contained triplicate images, 3 votes. I examined the set, or maybe not the votes, but they're documents that are backfilling the evidence. Oh, we had this many votes on election day. Now we have this many votes during the recount. Truth is, you inflated them on election night. Now you have to create and minimize that gap. So I examined the set of images visually, aided by software, and I agreed with them for 98 of the 100 sets. I disagreed about one, couldn't verify that one, but I treat this as 98 in 100 checks. The resulting 95% lower confidence bound shows that there is a 95% statistical confidence that at least 891 of the 918 claimed multiples are in fact genuine multiples, okay? We're jammed with fake ballots. Now, I did not have time to investigate more than this, and so based on these observations, I don't know. I can't tell. Are these accidental? Is this intentional? Who knows? But this is a surprising lack of tracking and protecting election materials. The most basic election safeguard is to check whether the number of voters who participated is equal to the number of ballots and the printout cards that were cast and the numbers tabulated. Now, I would expect all electronic data to be backed up on-site and off-site, at least for 22 months, but that didn't happen. So the loss of hundreds of thousands of image files from the first machine count and of nearly 18,000 images from the second machine count is hard to fathom because it was intentional. Fulton County would have noticed these errors had they simply just checked the numbers, checked the total numbers against the tab numbers. It seems that Fulton County does not know how many ballots and printout cards were even cast, how many voters cast votes, how many pieces of paper were scanned, nor do they know how those numbers even compare to each other. So absent basic ballot accounting, poll book reconciliation, the counting of electronic records, it is unsurprising that the two machine tallies differ so much. And the election commissions have also published best practices for chain of custody. So is this just chaos or is this intentional criminality? They say Fulton County's chaotic and unaccountable curation makes a true risk limiting audit impossible. You can't check anything. It is unreasonable for voters to trust that their votes were counted at all, much less counted correctly. We've got good reason to believe that some votes counted more than others. Some votes were included 2 times or 3 times in the total, and there's no way to know how many voters were admitted from the tabulation. From the records produced, it's impossible to determine malware, bugs, misconfiguration, or malfeasance. And so based on my review, it's clear the audit was a disaster, did not rely on anything reasonable. And I have no reason to believe that these problems are limited to Fulton County. Not investigated the others, but in summary, a rigorous audit can show you the truth. Georgia lacks a record. They have heavy reliance on the machines. They have a lack of physical accounting of any of the ballots to validate the machines. Memory cards are a joke. And they came out and they lied to everybody. They said, oh, we did an audit and it was perfect. This Berkeley genius who invented the type of audit says you couldn't do an audit like this scientifically. To provide reasonable assurance that every vote is counted, we need to fix this. Ballot marking devices should be reduced to a minimum, and we have to fix our elections. So he put together this amazing report. Of course, this was a declaration from a prior lawsuit signed by him under penalty of perjury that all of this is true. Philip B. Stark, who is been very useful in this investigation. And you can see everything he submitted here is just massive. Look at this guy's CV. Publications. He's like a super genius. Look at all this writing, man. That's a lot. And Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger, they took all of this. The judges looked at all of it and they said, well, we hate Trump though. And Joe Biden won. And so we're just happy to have him. Look at this writing. Good Lord. He just keeps writing. Like every day. Presentations, it just keeps going and going and going. This is how much stuff this dude has done. All right, so he's a genius. And if you go back through the rest of the documents, you're also going to find, trying to get there, Brian Kemp's letter, which he is including in this, confirming, I didn't realize how long this was. All right, let me save you some of the scroll here. And Brian Kemp, in his letter, even confirmed the same. And we're going to get there soon as we get through all of this guy's amazing works. And it just keeps going and going and going. All right, let me do this. See where it starts. Goodness. All right, so then we get to the Brian Kemp letter that looks... Well, actually, here are some of the other documents that I wanted to share. So these are the absentee audit board batch sheet. Okay, so this is how the Fulton County people are working on these things. Fulton, scanner 348, Donald Trump. Wow, look at that. Here's 4 for Trump, 93 for Joe Biden. Amazing. Here's another one. 92 for Joe Biden, 6 for Trump. Look at that. Here's one. 83 for Joe, 12 for Trump. Perfect. 87 and 13. 329, 118. Just keeps going. And so he's saying they don't even match. Trump, Biden, this is how they're calculating the numbers. You can see why it's such a disaster. But Brian Kemp said, yep, there are 36 inconsistencies here that they can't explain. 36 inconsistencies noted by Rossi are factual. They pose no underlying theories outside of the reported data. They could not be explained by my office, Brian Kemp. And so the purpose of this letter is to let you know that, yeah, there are 36 inconsistencies. And we're trying to figure out what the heck went on. Signed sincerely by Brian Kemp. Then they all just moved on. Of course, what we saw is that the governor then appointed the inspector general to a judgeship, also appointed the Georgia Bureau of Investigations to a judgeship, and the whole thing just kind of went away. Joe Biden waltzed into the White House. They indicted the president for daring to challenge all of this fraud, and the rest was history. But the case has now been unsealed, and we're seeing now that the judge is asking, what do the Fulton County commissioners want to do? Chairman called Rob Pitts of the Fulton Board of Commissioners submitted this lawsuit and said, we want to unseal the documents and we want to get our ballots back. So now that it has been unsealed, the judge issued this order and he said, what do you want to do? You asked for the warrant to be unsealed. It's unsealed. What's next? So they submitted this notice of intent. They said, all right, Fulton is here. Fulton County Board of Registration is providing everybody with notice of our intent to file an amended motion to get our property back. We're going to reassert the original grounds for relief that were not predicated on the sufficiency of the affidavit, and supplemental motion to address the redacted affidavit disclosed earlier yesterday. So unless the court orders otherwise, we're going to file another motion to get our property back by Y. Sue Jew over in Fannie's office, Fulton County, Office of Fannieland. And look who else is here. Man, amazing. Abby Lowell, also representing them, and Norm Eisen from the Democracy Defenders Fund. Bunch of Democrat super lawyers skidding into this case. Now, the media also is being asked, what do you guys want to do? Media came in here saying, we want to unseal this. The judge is saying, it's unsealed. What else do you want? After obtaining the search warrant, the FBI then seized 656 boxes. Then Rob Pitts and Fulton filed an emergency motion. Then various media entities filed their motions. And now the motion is asking the court to unseal the search warrant, but it's already unsealed. So since it has been unsealed and a redacted copy has been filed, now we want to know what you want to do. Submit your motion. Let us know no later than February 17th. Otherwise, I'm going to find that your requests are now moot since it's already unsealed and there's nothing else that we can do on this. So that's the latest on the case. Now, 11 Alive is also explaining that Rob Pitts is warning other states that, hey, man, they may be coming for you. We know Rob Pitts was already on the receiving end of a phone call, apparently from somebody at the FBI or the DOJ, alerting them that this raid was going to be occurring. And you got to imagine if there's fraud in other states like Arizona, which I suspect there is, and in Colorado, which I suspect there is, in Michigan and Maine and many of these other places, they're on alert. FBI might be knocking on your door. So here's what 11 Alive over in Atlanta has to say about this report on the latest there.
Other the irregularities from the 2020 election, if they were intentional or if they violated any federal laws. Now, when county officials were able to look at the unsealed affidavit yesterday, they say that this brings up claims that they've debunked and they've heard time and time again. Now, the document cites 2 federal laws at the center of this investigation, and one deals with preserving and retaining election records, and the other involves depriving voters of a fair election. It also lists several allegations, including claims that some ballot images from the election were not preserved, that some were scanned more than once, and that there were discrepancies during the hand count audit. Now, the affidavit also kind of gives us a picture into what was inside those 700 boxes that were taken by FBI agents during that raid last week, which includes physical ballots, ballot images, tabulator tapes, and voter rolls. Now, we heard from Fulton County Commission Chairman Rob Pitts, and he says that the documents, once again, it's not bringing up anything new, anything they haven't heard before. And he also says that these claims have been investigated for years now. He says that Fulton County...
Except they weren't investigated. That's the whole thing. Like the key points of fraud and the insertion of duplicate and triplicate ballots
has gone through,
glossed over it.
Multiple audits, reviews, and hand counts from the 2020 election. He also says that, get this, he plans to reach out to other states to let them know what could possibly come for them.
Yep.
Now, I'm reaching out to other counties because the president has stated that there are 15 other states that he's looking at, and 3 cities in particular. He talked about Philadelphia, he talked about Detroit, and there's one other city. I've been in touch with the chairs of their commissions because this is not just about Fulton County, as I've said from day one. This is a national effort.
That's why he has to warn everybody.
Something that we continue to hear. We continue to rehash the 2020 election here in Georgia.
Right.
And basically, we just, once you look at the affidavit, it's some of the same claims that we've heard from President Trump, but this time he has the backing of the judicial system, of federal authorities, actually going in and investigating this. Now, we do know that Commission Chairman Pitts, he also filed a motion to get those documents that were taken back into Fulton County custody. And he says that they're going to continue to fight for it because we haven't had a ruling on that motion. But he says that they really want those documents back, citing voter privacy, because people's signatures are on that information.
Yeah, and if you voted like 100 times, you definitely want that information to stay private. You don't want that coming out. It's like my signature is on like 1,000 ballots in those boxes. Oh, crap. That's not good. So, of course, they're going to fight to get him back. We're going to keep our eye on that. But while all of the fraud is occurring, look who it is, my friends. Fani Willis is back. And she's doing podcasts now. In fact, she's doing this guy's podcast, the Jamal Bryant podcast. It's called Let's Be Clear. And he calls Big Fani the boldest, bravest, and baddest sister to ever stand in law, because she thinks she's like Tupac now. Here is Big Fani out in Fulton.
To ever, hey family, the boldest, the bravest, and the baddest sister to ever stand in law is our champion. Fani Willis is with us on the Jamal Bryant podcast. Let's Be Clear, out this week on YouTube. Don't miss it.
All right, so she thinks she's a rapper. I think she came in there with a Biggie Smalls fur coat when she had to testify in front of the Senate, and now she's doing podcasts, and she's the biggest. He didn't say biggest. He should have, because she is the biggest Fani in Georgia. We all know that. So she'll be doing that. I know you can't wait to hear it. I can't wait to see what she has to say about some of this stuff. Should be fun. Meanwhile, Dolezal is saying that the lists are fraudulent. We remember Greg Dolezal, a state senator, went out there and visited homeless shelters, visited UPS stores, found that there were tons of Georgia voters registered at various locations where they clearly did not reside in violation of Georgia law. He says, we're going to stay on this over on real America's voice.
Faith to the system where people know that it's one person, one vote. Their votes not being diluted by people voting multiple times, people living, born in the year 1900. Fulton County has hundreds of people on their voter rolls today that list their year of birth as 1900.
That's crazy.
And it's just, statistical impossibility, and they seem incapable and unwilling and frankly uninterested in resolving this. And so we need to demand more. The state taking over Fulton County's elections probably will be the only thing that will cause them to get it in line. But once we do that, I think all Georgians will look at this and say, okay, the state has taken action. We've cleaned up the voter rolls. Dirty rolls mean dirty elections, and we've got to get them cleaned up.
Very, very dirty and noxious odors out there in Fulton County. Now, here was another exchange. Our friends over at Lindell TV carried this one for us. And they asked this congresswoman who is from, I believe, New York, Yvette Clarke, who represents Brooklyn, New York 09, happens to be an African-American woman. And here is her take on voter ID and voter requirements, voter identification to be presented at the polls, her concerns about it.
You just stated that the SAVE Act is an attack on civil rights and is racist. Could you just explain that further? Because 76% of Black Americans support the SAVE Act, according to CNN.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Well, we find it racist because at the end of the day, it's targeting Black communities with a cost burden. We've been through this historically, right? Where we've been prohibited from voting because we didn't know how many bubbles were in a soap bar. And so this is just a new iteration of that, and we're very focused on defeating it.
But if 76% of Black Americans support voter ID,
I don't believe that's 76%.
CNN reported it.
Well, that's
possible.
That's possible.
Okay.
But I do not agree with it.
Okay, so Black people are being discriminated against if they're required to show voter ID. And I don't even think that's a valid argument. I mean, I think if you're going to say that voter ID requirements are oppressive against any ethnicity, it's probably going to be the Latinxos, because large portions of that ethnicity invaded our country. So I'm not really sure if she's even accurate on that, but regardless, the whole conversation is racist because it's essentially saying that non-citizens who are of a certain color just can't go get ID. It's just too difficult for them, and they have to count bubbles in a soap bar or whatever the hell she was saying. But Tim Burchett is calling this out for what it is. He says Democrats are lying. The SAVE Act and also the Save America Act protects every American's vote. He says it is disgusting and frankly racist to assume that minorities can't obtain an ID. What's so complicated about it? Maybe he should talk to that congresswoman who says it's going to oppress Black people.
Now, look, I'm not a drinker. Everybody knows that. But I know if I go to Weigel's in Knoxville, Tennessee, down on the corner of Emory Road and Tazewell Pike, and if I go in there to buy a six-pack or a can of Skull or a scratch-off, dadgummit, I gotta produce an ID.
Dadgum right.
When you purchase a firearm, when you board a plane, when you open a bank account. If I put $100 in the bank and then right then and ask for 20 of it back, guess what? I gotta show a dadgum ID.
Dadgum right, you
Why
do.
can't you vote for an elected official without one, Mr. Speaker? This legislation codifies President Trump's executive action to secure our voter registration process, which has been a key platform of President Trump this term. Democrats are lying, Mr. Speaker, saying this bill prevents minorities from registering to vote. It protects their vote. It protects every American citizen's vote. And it disgusts me, and frankly, I find it racist to assume that minorities cannot obtain an ID. We need to have the guts to stand up and protect our dadgum elections, Mr. Speaker, and that means we need to pass the Save America Act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Heck yeah. It is racist, but they're very racist people. They said, well, we kind of need the illegal aliens to like clean our toilets and do the jobs that Americans won't do. Okay, so you want to bring in like a pseudo slave class and you want to call yourself a humanitarian non-racist? All right. So Luna was also out. You saw her clapping behind Tim Burchett, saying, if you are not an American, you do not get to vote in our elections. This is not some radical extremist position. It's common sense. And it's the only way to secure our elections moving forward. If we don't send the Save America Act to Trump's desk, we lose our nation. And so it's a lot about elections, but yeah, we've got, foreign illegal aliens voting. We've got criminal fraudsters who are double or triple scanning ballots It's a big problem, which is why we need ID. One person, one vote, unequivocally.
The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleagues are spending a lot of time lecturing the American people on how this is going to require you to show your papers. But last time I checked, during COVID, they demanded that if you simply wanted to go to a funeral, be with your loved ones while they were dying, or get married, you had to show your papers.
You couldn't.
In fact, in New York City, they were literally asking you for your COVID passport. Yet the Save America Act, a common sense piece of legislation that requires two things, voter ID plus proof of citizenship, is being labeled by people in the Senate and people in this very chamber as Jim Crow era laws. Well, let me remind the American people of history. It was the Democrat Party that championed the Jim Crow era laws. And this is the farthest thing from it. In fact, if you're doing that, you're insulting over 70% of your voters, Democrats, who believe that voter ID is the best way to secure an election. Then we have the argument that you have from Blue Anon saying that Trump is trying to steal the election and Orange Man bad, and this is somehow going to fix the midterms. But the fact is that if we are going to play that game, then you would want voter ID and you would want to secure the elections. So please support this legislation. I do not believe that Barack Obama, in showing his voter ID, was engaging in Jim Crow era law or pushing that type of perspective. And for the same people that are advocating, saying that Kristi Noem and ICE will demand your personal information and you will be under surveillance, let I remind them that they actually all authorized the reauthorization of FISA, unreformed, that violated your constitutional rights. So this is pretty simple. If you are not an American, you do not get to vote in our elections. This is not a free-for-all country. A majority of Americans support this. A majority of the world has voter ID in place. It is not racist. I appreciate my colleagues and the House admin for doing this, and I support all of my colleagues and urge them to vote for this piece of legislation. I yield my time.
Yes, only American citizens get to vote, and you only get one vote. You don't get to vote multiple times because some Fulton County poll worker decided to scan your ballot multiple times in order to steal the election for Joe Biden. Now, we talked about this yesterday, but Murkowski is one of the squishy, weak, pathetic Republicans who says, I'm not going to vote for the SAVE Act. She's over in the Senate, one of the people that Luna was talking about. And she posted this. She said, I oppose this because Democrats, if we do it, then the Democrats will come and do this against us. Saying when Democrats attempted to advance sweeping election reform, Republicans were unanimous in opposition because it would have federalized elections. Murkowski's a liar. She got called out for this in the community notes, saying that Murkowski was not unanimous at all. In fact, Murkowski voted with the Democrats. She was the only Republican to do it. So she will, in fact, vote for less voter safety. Murkowski, the only Senate Republican who voted to advance the Democrats' voting rights bill. Alaska needs to throw her out instantly. To restore a key piece of the Voting Rights Act, Murkowski said, I'm going to join the Democrats. Then she turns around and lies through her teeth, saying Republicans were unanimous. No, you weren't. You voted with the Democrats. Now you're voting once again with the Democrats because she's basically a Democrat. She wants the elections to be rigged, like many people in both parties do, probably how they're getting reelected. And I think the same thing is probably true about Maria Salazar, a Republican, saying, don't take away our nannies. We need people to come in here and pick our food and pick our fruits and pick our vegetables and clean our toilets. Largely, I think, because that's her constituency. She's protecting them. Both sides are doing it. Republicans want cheap labor. Democrats want cheap votes. All of them want increased GDP. No one cares if it's at the expense of the American people or our country, and they just keep marching forward. Our will be damned. Even if 70-something% of black people want this, they'll still call it racist because they know better. They know that they'll lose their power if they do this change. So Republicans now calling them out. You saw Loudermilk was out. He said when Democrats were in power, they passed Nancy's bill, 600-page bill to force a federal takeover and to allow candidates to use millions in public funds for their own campaigns and their personal expenses. Republicans are doing the opposite of that. This week, the House just passed today the Save America Act that goes over to the Senate. It's going to be, blood sport over there. Hopefully we can get it through. But here was Barry Loudermilk yesterday.
And I think it's rich that the other side of the dais up here is talking about a federal takeover of elections. When I sat in this committee just a few years ago with a bill called H.R. 1 that Speaker Nancy Pelosi pushed forward, it was a 600-page bill that was a total federal unconstitutional takeover of elections. It included provisions that were not just challenging to impose on the states, but impossible to impose on the states. So when we're discussing a way of making our election systems with more integrity, I find it disingenuous to hear that this is a federal takeover by those that have authored one of the greatest and most exclusive federal takeover election bills ever. And from the looks of folks at the table and in the audience, I think you all remember H.R. 1 and what it also included the federal government helping pay for campaigns. So it was quite an interesting time that we were here, and I just find it's even that much more interesting now that the folks who authored the greatest federal takeover of elections are complaining about wanting somebody to prove their citizenship before they vote.
Yeah, or just prove their ID. They won't even do that. They can't even acknowledge that just having a person match an ID, not citizenship, not birth certificate, none of those things. Can't even compromise on that because they know the system is rigged to their benefit, and if they lose that benefit, they're going to lose power indefinitely. So Fulton County, at the moment, is the epicenter of this. Of course, we're going to keep our eye on it. We now know that the judge will be coming down with a ruling very soon on whether or not to order the return of the ballots from the DOJ. We'll be here to cover it. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, now let's turn our attention over to Jack Smith because he's not out of the weeds yet. And here is this story. Jack Smith has more pressure building up around him. You see, Senator Bill Hagerty is saying now he's sending a demand over to Verizon to investigate what they did when they were colluding with Jack Smith. Jack, of course, spied on a bunch of Republicans. We saw that they were asking for answers from Verizon. They sent a letter to the CEO back in October. They said, hey, CEO, we want you to come down here and explain yourself in Congress. I've got clips of the exchanges, but guess who did not show up? The CEO of Verizon. They sent some lackey down there to try to squirm his way out of any culpability after Verizon was complicit in spying on Republicans. AT&T didn't do that. So remember that these people were the subject of Jack Smith's spying, political attack, political retribution, attacking your political opponents. All of that was invented by the Democrats, and they launched it. You can see it in writing. They said, hey, Verizon, the hell, man? Why'd you spy on Mike Kelly, Lindsey Graham, Bill Hagerty, Josh Hawley, Dan Sullivan, Tommy Tuberville, Ron Johnson, Cynthia Loomis, and Marshall Blackburn? We want answers. In fact, we want these answers. Did the subpoenas that you got from Jack Smith seek info by name and phone number? Did the DOJ or FBI under Biden place your company under a gag order so that you didn't have to talk to us about it? What data or information did you give to the Biden FBI and the DOJ? Spying on senators. The Republican Party lets the left get away with this constant refrain that Trump is committing retribution, political retribution. They got the cell phone records of a half dozen U.S. senators. What data or information from the affected members was provided? Did the DOJ see content in relation to any of the members? Were other members besides the 9 subject to other subpoenas from Jack Smith? Did you challenge these on any grounds? Or did you just roll over like the social media companies did when they were rigging the election on behalf of Joe Biden, covering up the Hunter Biden laptop stuff? Please explain and let us know. Signed by all of these senators, and man, there's a lot of them here. So if they don't get progress on this, it's going to show you how worthless it is to be a senator. Look at all of them. All joining hands, and Jack Smith is going to escape culpability. All of them sending a letter to Verizon. The Verizon CEO doesn't even show up. Bill Hagerty is now taking legal action. The first legal action of any member of Congress in response to Jack Smith's hacks. He said today, Hagerty took the first legal action of any member of Congress against Verizon for violating federal law. and disclosing our phone records to Biden's DOJ, cooperating with Jack Smith in Arctic Frost, saying he filed a complaint with the FCC, outlining how Verizon violated federal law and how they disclosed a senator's proprietary network information, didn't protect it at all. He's represented by lawyers. He said, Verizon eagerly handed my private phone records without a fight. I've been a customer for decades, and their complicity in this witch hunt against Trump and his supporters like me is a profound breach of trust. If this can happen to a sitting United States senator, we're totally screwed. That's why I'm pleased to take this first step to holding Verizon's feet to the fire. And that's, I mean, we want Jack Smith in jail, really, but if we can get the CEO of Verizon, okay, that's like a consolation prize while we're waiting for Jack. Any customer would expect Verizon to challenge this unconstitutional subpoena, but they didn't. The DOJ would have never gotten my phone records if Verizon didn't play along, just like Facebook played along when the FBI's like, oh, it's Russian disinformation. Mark Zuckerberg's like, yeah, that's good. Yeah, okay, so, all right, just suppress the laptop. I want Verizon to discipline its leaders who are responsible. Maybe he should be fired. Days after Trump launched his campaign in 24, Biden ordered Jack Smith to prosecute Trump, and he did. As part of that conspiracy, Biden asked Verizon to produce phone records from the senators and other congressional allies against Trump, and they did it. Verizon put its relationship with the Biden administration ahead of the law. So our Constitution protects us. Verizon made no efforts for this, and they refused to apologize. And as Verizon sought federal approval, Verizon continued its cover-up. When its actions became public, Verizon played dumb. Oh, no. Verizon pleaded ignorance about the investigation. They refused to give the Senator Hagerty, any more information because they said we had a gag order. Sorry, the judge said we can't. So here's what Hagerty wants. I want a written apology and admission that you broke the law by Verizon CEO and the CLO. Dan Schulman, you're called out. Vandana Venkatesh, you're called out. We also want discipline. We want jail, but discipline is what he wants. Documents and information about how Verizon processed this subpoena, reform of their efforts to ensure this doesn't happen again. We'll see if any of that occurs. Of course, there was a lot of testimony about that today and yesterday. Hagerty said Verizon broke my trust. They illegally shared my data. And Dan Schulman, the CEO of Verizon, ignored my letter. How do you ignore a letter from a sitting senator? Because they know nothing's going to happen. What are they going to do? What are these senators going to do? That's what they're saying back to you guys. Hopefully they're listening to this show because this is getting embarrassing. Verizon, can you hear me now? Probably not. He's probably going to throw that in the shredder too. But of course, we saw the demand went out. They came and sent a lackey into Congress. We'll take a look at his testimony. But Mike Lee said, Jack Smith subpoenaed my phone records along with those of many of my Senate colleagues, all of whom just happen to be Republicans. Retribution. Lawfare run amok. Congress must enact reforms like the Fairness Act and a warrant requirement for any searches that are targeting Americans under FISA 702. We're sick of being spied on by these goons. Marsha Blackburn was there getting into testimony about this with a rep from Verizon, saying Verizon admitted to me the company had no procedures for this. So why did it take Jack Smith's investigation into Trump and conservatives for them to finally realize this was problematic? Here's this guy, Mr. Chris Miller, I believe is his name, from Verizon in Congress with Marsha.
Mr. Miller, I want to come to you. Are you aware of the speech and debate clause in Article 1?
Yes.
Okay, and are you aware of the D.C. Circuit case U.S. versus Rayburn House Office Building?
Chairman Blackburn, I am not an expert on the speech or debate clause, but I have heard of that case.
You have heard of that case. Then you know that case stands for the proposition that there is a documentary non-disclosure privilege for members of Congress.
Wow.
So do you think Jack Smith violated that speech and debate clause protections?
Chairman Blackburn, I would defer to you and your colleagues about the scope and the application of the speech and
You're
debate
aware
clause.
of the case,
I am, Chairman
and
Blackburn.
you're aware of what the case found, that it establishes that proposition?
I am.
You are. So, do you think, in your opinion, did Jack Smith violate that speech and debate clause?
Chairman Blackburn, I do not know. I'm unaware of any case that addresses whether the speech or debate clause.
Okay, so then why did you turn over the tolling data? If you're aware of the Article 1 speech and debate clause and you're aware of the case, why did you do this?
I understand the frustration on this issue, Chairman Blackburn. We responded to this subpoena, principally the May 25th, 2020.
Even though you knew it was wrong?
No, Chairman Blackburn, we did not know it was
Okay,
wrong.
let me ask you this. I've got a question on something in your testimony, and I'm going to quote you. Our processes could have been better suited to meet what was a new and unique set of circumstances, end quote. So I'm glad that you all, it is heartening to hear that you realize you didn't have the right processes in place. But I want to make sure I'm understanding what you meant by that. So what you're basically saying is it took Jack Smith issuing secret subpoenas for the records of duly elected members of Congress as part of a weaponized investigation of President Trump for Verizon to finally realize that it probably could have, and I quote you, better processes. Is that accurate?
Chairman Blackburn, we should have had a better process to address this situation.
So in essence, what you're saying is that you had no process in place as of May 2023. And you had no way of identifying that something was a member of Congress records. Is that accurate?
That's correct, Chairman Blackburn, not at that time.
So you had no process in place, and therefore you turned everything over.
They just find technicalities. They say, well, there's nothing that says we can't do that. Jack Smith knew what he was doing. Of course, Verizon is culpable in this, but Jack Smith and his team should be the people who are really under the scrutiny here. And Verizon was just playing dumb, following orders like little partisan hacks. But we saw this today. Pam Bondi was in Congress, and we had a great exchange with Brandon Gill, an awesome representative from Texas. He says, the list of Biden, Harris, and the DOJ politically motivated investigations are endless. Watch out, he explains, what they unleashed on the Republican Party, and then compare and contrast that with the hyperventilating screeching that's coming out of the left right now when Trump is finding out that these people committed, for example, election fraud.
I've got a series of questions for you that we can get through pretty quickly, I think. Can you tell me, is it true that the Biden-Harris DOJ raided President Trump's home?
Yep.
They did.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ allow Jack Smith to spy on over a dozen Republican members of Congress?
Absolutely.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ seize the phone of a sitting Republican congressman?
Yep.
Yes.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ and Jack Smith pay at least $20,000 to confidential human sources to provide information on President Trump?
At least.
At least. Did the Biden-Harris DOJ and FBI fail to apprehend the suspect who placed pipe bombs near the Capitol ahead of January 6th?
Yes.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ target parents as domestic terrorists?
Absolutely.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ target pro-life Catholics, going so far as to interview a priest and a choir director?
Yes.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ send FBI SWAT teams to arrest pro-life advocates with no criminal histories?
Yes.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ use the FACE Act to target pro-life advocates while it allowed anti-life agitators to vandalize, destroy, and firebomb pregnancy resource centers and churches?
Multiple times, I believe.
Multiple times. Did the Biden-Harris DOJ ever determine who leaked the Dobbs decision?
I can't discuss that. No, under Biden-Harris.
Got it.
No.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ and FBI target whistleblowers for revealing waste, fraud, and abuse within the department to Congress?
Not to my knowledge.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ refuse to say whether it coordinated with Alvin Bragg, Fannie Willis, and Letitia James in their lawfare against President Trump?
Matthew Colangelo.
They refused.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ slow walk the criminal investigation and prosecution of Hunter Biden?
That's an understatement, in my opinion.
Yep. Did the Biden-Harris DOJ determine who brought cocaine into the Biden White House?
They did not.
They did not. Did the Biden-Harris DOJ cover up the extent?
As far as we know, they did not.
Right, that's right. Did the Biden-Harris DOJ cover up the extent of the Russia collusion hoax?
Absolutely, in my opinion, yes.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ seek leniency from a federal court for an IRS contractor who leaked sensitive tax information on over 7,600 Americans, including President Trump?
Yep.
Yes.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ sue Texas because the state wanted to secure its own southern border?
Yes.
And finally, did the Biden-Harris DOJ attack SpaceX for hiring too many Americans?
I believe they did.
Yep.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable, and I appreciate that a lot of this is being cleaned up under your leadership. So thank you for returning the DOJ back to its core focus, which is on the rule of law. And I think that we see the results of that. I've got a few more similar questions for you. How have, over the past year since President Trump has been in office, how have murders trended in the United States?
Since President Trump has been in office, the murder rate has dropped to a historic 20% drop in the national murder rate, lowest since 1900.
20% drop in 1 year. That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And that's thanks to the incredible men and women of law enforcement, FBI, DEA, ATF, everyone working together to solve violent crime, along with our sheriffs, our local law enforcement, working as a team throughout this country, and our great state and federal prosecutors.
Yep. And how have robberies trended? Have they gone, even if they've just gone up or down?
Robberies, all violent crime, all violent crime has decreased, as well as robberies.
So murders, violent crime, the country is more safe now, it's fair to say, would you agree, than it was a year and a half ago under Joe Biden?
Absolutely, and Director Patel is working tirelessly to catch those, I'm sure you've been seeing, on the most wanted list.
Mm-hmm.
He and Deputy Director Bongino from day one said, we're going to get the most wanted list, and that's what's been happening, working hand in hand with all of our agencies.
Yep. And I want to thank you for that. Thank you for the work you've been doing to refocus the DOJ again on doing your core job. We're very happy with it, and I'll yield the remainder of my time to the chairman.
And the left will just continue to cry about Trump's retribution when they have that entire laundry list of accolades. They're proud about all of those, by the way. They got little stickers on their refrigerators. People who were prosecuting the J6ers, people who were prosecuting President Trump, are now running for Congress as partisan Democrat hacks, calling out J.P. Cooney on that one. So, of course, a lot of testimony today, Democrats screaming about Epstein and all the other things, but Hagerty hopped on with our friends Clay and Buck, and he said, here's what we're working on as it relates to Jack Smith. Another clip from Bill Hagerty right here.
Because I don't think a lot of people know the backstory, and it's important stuff, but we need to educate ourselves here, including us here on the show, about exactly what you're facing here. So take us through this.
Certainly, Buck. Well, if you go back to 2023, this is when the Biden administration weaponized every aspect of the government to try to block Donald Trump, to try to destroy his candidacy for president, to go after their political opponents. And it wasn't just President Trump, it was also his allies. So no surprise, within days of President Trump announcing that he is running for president in the 2024 race, the Biden administration brings in Jack Smith, initiating this program called Arctic Frost, where initially they go to Mar-a-Lago, the document search that they undertook there, that invasive process made for TV, again, trying to smear President Trump, trying to hurt him. And just days after that, Jack Smith's team requested the phone records for myself and several other U.S. senators, again, allies of President Trump, all of us Republicans. That's one thing that we had in common. But they went after our phone records, again, in an attempt to, I presume, go after President Trump's allies, go after President Trump's friends. They requested records for a number of days that were surrounding the January 6th incident back in 2021. Again, Jack Smith is looking for anything that he can do to discredit President Trump or his allies, I presume. The sad part is the Senate's process is constitutionally protected. We are not supposed to be invaded in this manner, and if we are, we're supposed to be informed of it. What happened was Verizon willfully, gladly handed over my phone records, even more information than was requested. And if you think about that, why would they have done this? As I dug into it further, I find out that Verizon's chief legal officer is a former staffer for one Henry Waxman, one of the most partisan Democrats from California to ever serve in the halls of the U.S. Congress. You've got this activist operating there in the halls of corporate America, more than willing to cooperate and collaborate with the Biden administration to try to harm Republicans and to try to harm President Trump.
Just like Zuckerberg.
To coalesce around this strategy they called Arctic Frost to try to take down President Trump. And to see Verizon step up and do this, and to see the, again, law enforcement weaponized in the way that it has been, absolutely terrible. I'm doing this so Verizon never does this to the American public. But if you think about it, if they would do this to a sitting senator, if Verizon would hand over our phone records without telling us, violate our due process, violate the Constitution, not put up any resistance because they have a political objective, I presume, if they're willing to do that to me, what would they do to the rest of their customers? And I have been a Verizon customer for decades. And for them to do this to me, I think, was just outrageous. But it would be even more so if they begin doing this broadly to the general public. Then what we find out, Jack Smith just continues to pursue this sort of thing. And if corporations like Verizon decide to align with partisan actors like this, I think it's terrible for America. So I hope that the FCC will take this very seriously. Verizon certainly did not take it seriously. When I reached out to the CEO and the chief legal officer, I pretty much got ignored. They had some low-level person respond to me. They didn't even respond to me directly after multiple attempts to communicate with them. So now we'll see if the FCC has better results. Again, dealing with partisan operatives.
We need the DOJ
these
too.
Large corporations. I don't think America needs this type of collaboration, this cooperation aimed at Republicans, aimed at taking us down. It doesn't stand in America. It's not going to stand, and I hope the American public will feel better after the SEC has had an opportunity to dig into this.
We'll feel better when there are indictments. How about a conspiracy against rights from that partisan hack who's in Verizon? We have already gone through this. We lived through this in 2020, where all of the social media companies were smashing our voices down and censoring us so that they could elect their preferred candidate. It's a sick thing that happens. And I used to remember a time like, if a senator called your office or sent you a letter, that's like a 5-alarm fire. Holy crap, the weight of the federal government is going to come down against us. Now they're just like, whatever. Trump will be gone in a few years. Democrats will be back. And then we'll have friendlies and we won't have to worry about this ever again. But there was a third branch of government that's supposed to check these things. Joe Biden hack executive branch with hack Jack Smith spying on Congress. Is there a third entity that could have prevented all of this? Oh yeah, the courts. Except the courts are in on it. They're rigged. And now Judge Boasberg, who got hit with a misconduct complaint, has now been exonerated. Or rather, the complaint has been dismissed. And here is what the judge said. On the Judicial Council of the Sixth Circuit, saying a complaint was filed by Trump's DOJ called Chad Mizell, who was then the chief of staff to Pam Bondi, against Judge Jeb Boasberg. Remember him? The gist of the complaint is that in this case, this is not related to the spying. It's related to his partisan hack language. But he's the subject of this complaint because he violated code of conduct canons where he made comments at a judicial meeting. He was presiding over cases, dealing with the Justice Department, and now he's allegedly in trouble according to the DOJ. Explains how this body works, how they investigate the judges, and explains what went down at this event. After each meeting of the conference, they take some formal actions. He explains what's happening in the conference. Now, as for the underlying litigation, this was all about the illegal aliens who were deported. Judge Boasberg said, turn the plane around. Supreme Court said, you have no power. He said, yes, I do. He said, I can hold you in criminal contempt and can continue to investigate you, even though the Supreme Court said I have no jurisdiction. So why do we have this complaint now? On July 29th last year, the DOJ filed a complaint against Judge Boasberg with us. The complaint focuses on a statement the judge made during a conference. According to the complaint, the judge, who is a member of the conference, quote, expressed concerns to other members of the conference. He said, quote, that the administration would disregard rulings of federal courts, leading to a constitutional crisis, which is always what they say when they don't get their way, throwing temper tantrums like little partisan babies. In the weeks that followed the statement, the judge made several rulings that demonstrated hostility towards the administration, saying he violated 3 codes and canons of judicial conduct. Now, after conducting an initial review, the chief judge of a circuit may dismiss the complaint under certain mechanisms. And that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to dismiss this complaint against Judge Jeb, a federal judge protecting another federal judge, saying what he said was not bad at all. The department identified one source of evidence for this statement, but there was not even any documentation attached in the complaint from the DOJ. So we contacted the department. Oh my gosh, Pam. The judge called Pam and said, hey, do you have a missing attachment here? You say this is evidence. If you fail to submit the attachment as evidence, then we're not going to look at it. The department did not supply the attachment. Great. So since there is no evidence, there's no source for what he said. And so I'm going to dismiss it. Later in the complaint, the department does refer to a Fox News clip discussing the allegation, but they're discussing the allegation. There's not an actual source. Now, even if it were true, this is what they talk about at these hearings anyways. And so I'm going to dismiss this complaint against Judge Boasberg. And if they have a problem with it, they can take this up on appeal. They can go to the DC Circuit. They can go to the Supreme Court. But as it stands, the complaint against Judge Jeb Boasberg, which was decided back in December, published more recently, is now dismissed. And so, yet again, another avenue of trying to hold these judges accountable fails. Great. So Pondy was asked about this by Andy Biggs from Arizona today, saying, are you going to let up on this? Complaints are being dismissed. We've got this judge running roughshod over all of the litigation coming in front of him, randomly assigned to some of the most high-profile cases. Are you going to do anything about this, Pam?
Yeah, Congressman, we are committed to working with Congress to uncover weaponization and other misconduct by Jack Smith, by others, Arctic Frost, everything that happened under the past administration. And we are committed to working with you on that. And we are working with Chairman Jordan, with the House Intel, with all of our my fellow cabinet members on resolving that issue.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad you brought up Arctic Frost, because Section 702 was used in the Arctic Frost investigation.
It was.
And information derived was used by Special Counsel Jack Smith. And my question has always been, and no one's been able to answer this, is what was the legal predicate for using a foreign intelligence authority in the Arctic Frost investigation? Have you been able to ascertain any legal predicate?
Congressman, what I can tell you today is that has been referred to my office. I can't discuss anything regarding that because it is very active and ongoing.
And you probably can't answer this one either, but I really want to know if Section 702 queries related to that matter involved members of Congress, which we know at some level it did, congressional staff, which we know at some level did. We've heard that journalists or other U.S. persons not suspecting of acting as foreign agents were also caught up in that. Can you answer that question and say whether queries did cover all those groups I just identified?
It is a very active pending investigation within my office. However, I believe many members of Congress have stated that their phones were part of Arctic Frost. We are well aware of that, and we are taking this very seriously, and this is a very active investigation. And I would keep going and say if any member of the Democrat Party, if any of them, if that had happened to them, we would take that just as serious as we do. And they should be jumping up and down, screaming, supporting you and what you want to do, because this should be a bipartisan issue.
Well, I hope it is a bipartisan issue.
It's not.
You know, I'll just
It's not. They exploit their power to attack the other side. The other side then comes around and says, how could you do this to us? And they say, well, because we want to beat you and defeat you and put you in prison. And when there are no repercussions for those actions, what's the disincentive?
With these last couple of questions, which I'm sure fall into the same investigation privilege, but that's this. How many such queries were actually conducted overall? This is outside Audit Frost in the prior year by the FBI or other intelligence community. And particularly, we really need to know, what were the legal standards applied? Did they use probable cause? Did they use reasonable articulable suspicion? Or did they have no individualized suspicion and just were gathering up information? And that's beyond the investigation with regard to Arctic Frost. I don't expect you to have that information today, but if you can help get that information so we can understand the extensive nature of this continued misuse of 702, it would be very particularly helpful.
Yeah, looking forward to some more information on that. And meanwhile, the DOJ is apparently demanding or seeking examples of egregious judges for Congress to review, which is great because we have an entire channel here of egregious judges. We're like experts at it because we've covered so many of them with Boasberg, with Zenas, with Alsup, with Amir Ali. The list goes on, many of whom are foreign-born, like Sparkle Sukunan over there in D.C. and others. Never-ending supply of them. Just give me a phone call. We'll put a whole list together for you. Even make a spreadsheet. So now they're ramping up the pressure, saying on Tuesday, the DOJ is asking federal prosecutors to give us the most egregious examples of judges impeding the agenda so that Congress can do something. And it's like, look, man, if Congress won't even do anything when they spy on them literally and they get Lindsey Graham's 3 a.m. text messages with Zelensky, what are they going to do? The Justice Department, which is led by Bondi, made the disclosure in a report to Bloomberg that they recently asked all 93 U.S. attorneys for examples of perceived judicial activism that could inform potential impeachment referrals to Congress. That requires Congress to do something about it. We'll see if they do. Now, we also saw John Kennedy was there. He said, hey, Mr. Verizon guy, why are you here? Why do we not have your boss here, the CEO?
Mr. Miller, you're the general counsel of Verizon, is that right?
Of our consumer group, Senator.
Who is your CEO?
Dan Schulman is the CEO.
Could you get close to the mic, please?
Dan Schulman is
Why
the CEO.
isn't he here today?
Senator, I understood that you wanted a legal department representative here.
No, we invited him. Why didn't he come?
Senator, that was my understanding is that you were looking for legal department testimony.
Well, does he know you're here?
Yes, Senator.
Oh. Is he too tired? I mean, is he too busy to come?
Absolutely not. Mr. Schulman is very focused on finding the right solutions for the committee.
I can tell.
We've been talking about.
Does he not respect the United States Senate?
He doesn't.
He absolutely respects the United States.
No, he doesn't.
Maybe he's tired. Could he be tired? I looked up his salary last year. He made $71 million.
Woo!
Maybe he's been up all night counting his money and he's tired. Could that be it?
No, Senator. Mr. Schulman has only recently been appointed the CEO of Verizon.
Were you general counsel when Verizon had to pay $93.5 million because it cheated the taxpayers of this country by charging on invoices to the GSA?
Senator, can you say a little bit more? I'm not.
You don't remember that?
I'm not familiar. I'm sure you're familiar with what you're talking about.
Were you CEO when the FCC fined Verizon $46.9 billion because you shared location data of your customers with third parties?
I am not now and have never been the CEO of Verizon, but I'm familiar.
I mean, were you general counsel?
I was not in my current role, but I'm familiar with the matter you're talking about.
Yeah. Were you general counsel of Verizon when Verizon had to pay $30 million in ERISA litigation for cheating their own employees?
Senator, I have some familiarity with that matter. I was not in my current role.
Thought you might. Were you general counsel of Verizon when you guys and gals implemented racial quotas in hiring?
Senator, I'm not quite sure what you're talking about.
Yes,
I do disagree with
yes,
the
you do.
suggestion that.
Yes, you do. You know perfectly well what I'm talking about, counsel.
He does. And shout out to Kennedy for calling out the boss, man. You hate that too. You're a new lawyer. You show up to court and the judge is like, I thought I wanted a partner here. I thought I ordered your partner to be here. You're like, I know you did, but he sent me. So I'm here. Oh, okay. And it doesn't usually go well from there. I've been there specifically. So we also then saw the fraud was rampant. It wasn't just at the ballot box. It was in the media, and it was in these Verizon companies and in CBS and in Facebook and everywhere. And the president posted this exchange of Catherine Herridge, one of the greatest of all time, explaining what CBS did to her when she was investigating the Hunter Biden laptop, which they all covered up.
We eventually broadcast a story about the Hunter Biden laptop after the midterm elections in 2022. We commissioned a forensic review. I got a copy of the laptop data. I have it here still. I went to a lot of effort to get the cleanest copy of the laptop data, the same data that was provided to the FBI, because I didn't want to have any professional journalistic risk for CBS News. I wanted this thing to be totally locked down. When we did the story, we did it after the midterms. I argued against that because it was ready before the midterms. And my training is that you should always do the story when it's ready to go. You should not be dictated by the political cycle. Once we got the laptop story on the morning news, I felt that there was so much there that we could still do. For example, in the text messages, there's unfortunately the use of the N-word, the liberal use of the N-word. And I thought this was worthy of a story, but I was told that it was not something that interested CBS News.
Hunter
then
dropping the hard
I
R.
asked for a forensic review of the laptop, and we found that there were more than half a dozen emails that were likely used by Joe Biden. I thought that was a story. But the answer that came back was, well, we need to know what the content is of the emails. But that was going to be a years-long process. So there was no way. So there were a lot of reasons I was told not to do it, not to pursue it. I spent a lot of my time at CBS following the Hunter Biden story. And one of the things that really struck me is this kind of disconnect. I didn't understand how a senior executive like George Cheese could tell me that this was a high priority for the network and for his boss. And yet the executives at CBS News, show producers, anchors could refuse that. I came to the conclusion that they must have felt that they were more powerful than George Cheeks, which was astonishing to me. I'd never worked at a place where a directive from the top would be so defied.
They were more powerful than him. The story didn't run, so they won. So that's what we're dealing with. Jack Smith is colluding with a bunch of allies in Verizon, was colluding with a bunch of allies. They're still there. Vandana Venkatesh, Dan Schulman, all of them helping the Democrats because the Democrats will help them back. And the incestuous, disgusting, anti-American cabal continues on until Pam Bondi indicts somebody or does something about it, until the Congress impeaches a judge or subpoenas somebody to come in here and answer questions under oath about their crimes. But we're going to be here continuing to cover it. Hopefully we start to see some action soon. Thank you for joining us as we do. All right, now if you're just joining us, quick recap on what we talked about today. We spent some time in Fulton County, obviously. Criminal investigation going on over there, trying to make heads or tails of what the FBI is actually investigating because, of course, they unsealed the affidavit, but that's just surface level stuff. Like the theory of the case is yet to be revealed. We don't even know who the subjects are of the actual crimes. Are they the clerks? Are they the poll workers? Are they the people who are supposed to be doing the audits? Lots of questions, but more will be revealed. We went back and looked at this great declaration that was submitted by Philip P. B. Stark, a very smart man who's got a massive CV, Berkeley, data scientist, and all the things. And he's explaining just how fraudulent the election ultimately was. And of course, we spent a lot of time on that, talking about it. And we also zoomed out on this and talked about an election theory, about triplicate scanning, how the batches are duplicated, how you backfill with the sheets after the fact and eliminate the gap between the digital votes and the printed votes. Talked about all of this digital inflation and how the QR codes could be a part of it. Got updates on the case. We know the judge is asking for some clarity. What do you guys want now that the warrants have been unsealed? We're waiting to see if the judge will order the documents and the ballots and the boxes to be returned. More on that coming soon. Meanwhile, Fani Willis is doing podcasts now, like she's Tupac or something. And we saw a lot of reaction here from Greg Dolezal. We saw that this congresswoman thinks that voter ID is going to harm black people for whatever reason. Tim Burchett says that's pretty racist, and I agree with him. We then saw Luna and others demanding that we get the SAVE Act passed. Lisa Murkowski was called out aggressively for being a liar, as what it sounds like. Republicans were unanimous in opposition. No, you weren't. You voted for it, liar. Back in 2021, she probably forgot. But we then heard from Loudermilk and others as we're trying to squeeze through the SAVE Act. It passed the House of Representatives, now marching on the Senate. Hopefully they do it. Meanwhile, we got Bill Hagerty, a senator, filing an FCC complaint against Verizon, saying that their people who are investigating and delivering for Jack Smith's illegal subpoenas, all of them apparently are Democrat individuals. Somebody worked for a major Democrat individual. We learned a lot about that today. We heard from Mike Lee. We then saw Marsha Blackburn was here. We had Brandon Gill, who's like becoming MVP out there, man, like one of the more competent Congress people. We appreciate his work. We then heard from Hagerty saying that they are Democrats. A complaint against Boasberg has been dismissed now because there's no consequences at all for a federal judge. You can do whatever the hell you want. No one cares. Biggs was asking Bondi some questions. The DOJ is asking for questions about problematic judges. They should give us a call over here. And then we heard from both Catherine Herridge and John Kennedy to round out the day. But now, my friends, it is time to hear from you. And thank you for being here. Thanks for subscribing to our channel if you haven't already done that. That way, when we come back tomorrow, we don't miss you because we're going to have another great stream here for the rest of the week. We're looking forward to digging into it with you. But now, I think I saw some amazing donos and super chats come in. Thank you for supporting our work and making what we do here possible. Very grateful to have you. Let's see who's joining us on the day. Oh, we got a Pam Bondi action figure in the house. Indeed. Indeed. And, oh, we got some other, okay, nice, very nice. Thank you, friends, for these. Yes, here is where we're starting. Tim Jake, what's up, Tim Jake? Says, Jonathan Turley's column today, shout out to Jonathan Turley, discusses the preliminary injunction against California, which is requiring ICE to be unmasked. Turley argues the admin should appeal, even though they won because the decision is so flawed. Saying the decision was based on the fact that California exempted its own police, not federal supremacy. What are your thoughts on appealing a flawed decision that you won? Yeah, I mean, it's... So I haven't read that decision. I did see the decision come through. And that also came after, I think, the TPS situation. So I'm thinking about both of those. But yeah, I mean, if the rule is adverse to you, like the outcome is important, but it matters as much as the rule. If the judge like carved out a bad rule, but you technically win, then yeah, you'd want to appeal that. And there are times where that happens, like both sides appeal because they want the ultimate rule that will be applied to all future cases to be the rule. And the California case, I think that was a state case, right? That was not a federal case. So it's like California state law ruling in favor of California. The feds want more of a broad federal rule to be the standard, not some sort of, California jerry-rigged outcome. So I haven't read it, but maybe that's worth digging into. And thank you for the donos there, Tim Jake. Jonathan Turley's a pretty sharp dude, so I'm sure his analysis on that is very good. But it's more about the rule, right? You want the legal rule to be on your side, even if... And if the rule's good, then you definitely should win. But if the judge is kind of, carved... It's like a... It's not a long-term solution. You happen to be right now, but you may lose again in the future when it really matters. So that's kind of the logic that I think Turley's probably going through. Hey, Corn Dog Antihero said Lisa Murkowski, according to Shiloh Marks, won Alaska by 18,000 votes in 2022. Alaska registered 45,000 new voters between 2020 and 2022. None of the 45,000 new voters required proof of citizenship to register to vote. Yeah, so I would guess that Murkowski is also in on it. If you're not somebody who wants voter ID, then voter ID, I would say that you're probably a beneficiary of not having it. Like, it's pretty obvious. Like, if you don't want financial controls to eliminate fraud, like, no, we don't need those. You're probably a fraudster. That's why you don't want those rules. Good to see you. Hey, Former, what's up? Says, having some technical difficulties on the iPhone app. Sorry about that, Former. I'm sorry that's happening on Locals. We have sent an email to Locals, and hopefully they're on it. But in the meantime, try watching on just the browser. My understanding is the browser is much better. The Locals iPhone app apparently is having some problems. Thank you, Former, for that. Thanks for being a membo over on Locals. Londo, ever noticed how they stand on statistical sampling to prove the election was accurate? But when the statistical sampling proves fraud, the statistics are not votes. Right. Any bad audit, they just find a reason why that's invalid. And as long as they do an audit, some guy walks in, he like opens up the binder. He's like, audit complete. Great job. Nice job, Brad. Great job, Raffensperger. Amazing election. Whew, wow, it was amazing. I've audited it. Let me write a piece of paper. Well, did you check this or that or this or that? No, but it's valid. And any claims otherwise are completely baseless. Thank you, Londo. Hey, what's up? Nick Ricada in the house. Ricada rated our stream. Shout out to our friends from Ricada Law. Ricada's back. I've been seeing his streams. He's looking good, man. He looked good today. He had a suit, tie on, some aviator glasses. Looking sharp over there, Nick. Good to see you. So what's going on? We had this one coming in from Doan. What's up, Doan? Hey, is that you? It's the same guy, I think. How'd you find that? That's great. Hey, what's hard about DQing the electoral votes from states who can't run clean elections? Let's treat bad election data like inadmissible evidence. Well, we tried to do that, actually, on January 6th. Remember? We had Ted Cruz and we had somebody in the House who were saying that we needed to have a debate about these fraudulent certificates of assertion of election validity. And Mike Pence was supposed to say, I've got two competing slates of electors. And so now we have a debate about this in Congress. And Congress can decide whether to accept those votes or not. But they didn't want that to happen. And the FBI and Homeland Security sent a bunch of people in there. Then they had fake pipe bombs that deviated all of the security away from the Capitol. Then all of the Congress people had to evacuate the Capitol. That was the exit plan. Remember the Oceans movies, Oceans 11, Oceans 13, whatever? You need an exit plan. And in the third one, they get that big boring tunnel machine and they vibrate the building and then everybody exits the building. It's the same thing. They shook Congress so that they couldn't actually even have a debate about what certificates to accept from fraudulent states. We were watching it. We were like watching it live. Like, wow, this is not good. So that would be the strategy. But they hit the exit button and everybody fled. And then by that time, everybody came back and they certified it in the dark of night, like 4 hours later, cleared out the building, certified it. CIA had its day. Hey, what's going on? Gary Herman. Fulton should reach out to Guinness. More 126-year-olds than any county in the world. It's got to be a world record. I know, man. A lot of senior citizens over there. I don't even know what you do when you're 126, but apparently you vote in elections. It's what they do. One thing they have in common is they're vigorous enough to get up, go down, fill out their mail-in ballot, and vote. All for Joe Biden. Isn't it fun? Thank you for that, Gary Herman. Good one. Object Class Keeter says, in Georgia, they claimed the same thing about the voting laws in 22. The voter turnout with black people actually increased in the state. Yeah, I guess because they have IDs or something. Is that what was going on? I don't know, Object Class Keeter. But yeah, I think personally that having safe and secure like voter integrity makes people have more respect in the elections, makes them feel like their vote counts. If one of the biggest justifications for people not voting. You hear this all the time. Do you vote? No. Why? What does it matter? Who cares? Like, what is it going to change anything? And if it's a fraudulent election, they're right. It's all rigged. It's like going into a casino and thinking you're going to win. Some people do. Mark, what's up? Hey, Murkowski just admitted she is a Democrat with an R next to her name. I know, man. She got caught red-handed. How can she come out and say that Republicans were unanimous when she literally voted for it with the Democrats? The only one. So I think if you're against voter ID, you're a beneficiary of the fraud. What's up, psychological projectionist? Good to see you. Dems support foreign interference if it votes Democrat. They want anything. Yeah, they don't care. Legal aliens, duplicate ballots, water main breaks, rigged insurrections. They'll do whatever it takes. That's why Republicans are getting rolled everywhere. They'll put you in jail, man. They'll indict your whole friggin' family. Baby cakes, they require us to have a real ID to fly now. ID to file taxes. The SAVE Act must pass, period. I couldn't agree more. A lot of people are pounding the drum on this one on X, especially Elon is sharing senators' phone numbers and all the things. If you're in a state with a red senator who's on the fence, it's now the time to call. Your boys in Arizona. We got Mark Kelly, the criminal, insurrectionist, and Ruben Gallego, who is just a total embarrassment to our whole state. So they're not going to vote for it because they want all the illegals in Arizona to go vote for him. What's going on? Biltong is here. Premium Biltong from Biltong USA. It's high protein. It's keto friendly. It's got no additives. U.S. sourced beef, authentic South African flavor. Get some today at BiltongUSA.com and check out using code Robert. You'll save some money too, 10%. Thank you, King of Biltong. D Spatafor. What's up, D Spatafor? Welcome. We had a great members only stream this morning, by the way. If you're not a member on YouTube or on Locals, we'd love to have you. We had a great stream this morning. We talked about the RNC submitted their election brief in an election case in the Supreme Court. Of course, we're talking about election deadlines on that one. Can you count ballots after the election day is over? And ballots come in after it's over. Mississippi wants to count for 5 days. Republicans say we have an election day for a reason. Very interesting brief. We talked about it this morning on the members only stream. Segment will be coming out later. Hey, Voice of the People. What's up, Voice? Wait, she can't discuss the leak of the Dobbs decision? Oh, so they are looking into that. I'd put money on Ketanji to be involved in that. Did you see Ketanji was on The View today? Pimping out her book. I'd put money on Ketanji. Yeah, it might have been Ketanji. It could have been Sotomayor. She also has that little streak, I think, in her. But yeah, that's a big one. And I don't know if the DOJ is going to get involved in that unless the court wanted them to. The court's very much, we manage our own business. And Roberts came out and just asked everybody to sign NDAs on that so there are no future leaks. And if there are, there'll be repercussions. But we'll see. Retired 5-0. Hey, 8 months, retired 5-0. Man, we got Sergeant Bob. We got retired 5-0. We got former LEO who can't hear anything on the stream because the Locals app is broken. Holy crap, almost a full baby. Man, it flies by, doesn't it, retired 5-0? Thanks for being here. Yeah, it does go fast. I know. We got a physical baby coming in July over here, too. Chubby, I really wish they'd stop touting this historically low murder rate since they've never, at least to my knowledge, addressed the documented evidence of several blue states and cities clubbing their numbers to lower rates. How are we supposed to even believe this now? Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. I've always had my doubts about crime stats. They were just rigged throughout the board. Like they call Latinos whites, and look at all these white criminals. Like, okay, we see what you're doing all over the place. And I think the FBI and the DOJ have also been happy to take credit for a lot of what local cops are doing. But I tend to believe that it's right. If you have illegal aliens who are on high alert or leaving in large numbers and kind of keeping a low profile, I think that alone could create a nationwide kind of suppression of criminal activities because portions of the criminal population is now on notice and on high alert. But I agree with you. Mark Twain said there are lies, there are damned lies, and then there are statistics. Thank you, Chubby. Rick D. Just no words from Rick D. Rick is almost at 6,000 jumps out of an airplane. We talked about that this morning. Pretty amazing. UN Watch says the Islamic regime in Iran has just been elected as vice chair of the UN Commission for Social Development, whose priority theme will be promoting democracy, gender equality, and ensuring tolerance and nonviolence. What? Do they have those things in Iran? Tolerance? Don't they throw people off buildings? All right. I hear no objection. All right. Thank you, Rick D. I don't know what that's about, but it sounds insane like everything else. Corn Dog, if Republicans who were spied on and lied to won't even fight for themselves with all their power and authority, they sure as hell won't fight for you. That's right. They won't. And honestly, they're victims here. So if they can't even represent themselves when they're the victims of a governmental offense, like all of our screaming about whatever, okay, peasants, just go away, peasants. Henry's K. Strand. Hey, welcome. Henry's K. Strand. Good to see you. Grab the members only stream this morning. Repenting Daily. Man, good one. Good to see you too. We'll be back tomorrow. It's going to be Thursday. We're going to have a great members only stream in the morning. 9 a.m. Arizona, 11 Eastern, 8 California. We'll see you in the members only morning stream. We had a good one this morning. We talked about Supreme Court stuff. Good times. Hey, Michael Manson, 35 months as a membo. Man, that's a long time. I don't even know how many babies that is. 4, maybe. That's a lot. Michael Manson. Thanks, Robert. Time flies when you're having fun. It does fly. This show goes like in a blink of an eye. It's just like time travel. Michael Manson, thank you for this. 35 months, man. It's a long time. We've been through a lot together. We appreciate you being here and supporting us this entire time. Hey, it's Pam Bondi in action figure. Oh, Pam. There's another black hole on your desk. That's where the Epstein files were and all the other indictments and all the criminal referrals. Oh. Somebody needs to plug that. Where's Jerry Nadler? Can he just sit there for a minute? Hey, Voice says, you want Bondi to do something? She can't even get the seditious 6 indicted. I know. I don't know that that's a Bondi problem, though. I think that's a DC problem. Democrat grand juries are nullifying, right? There is no, a lot of people, we're wishing we had an older version of America where people could set aside their tribalism and act in the interest of their country and their countrymen. But we don't have that anymore. It's basically devolving into pure tribalism. And if you don't have a tribe, then you're going to be alone. And in DC, that's what they're doing. So if you're a Democrat and you have a jury of 93% Democrats like you have in DC, you're not going to get indicted. The subway guy never even got charged, or got charged but not convicted. Throwing sandwiches at federal agents. Clearly assault, not even on a question about it. It's on video. No conviction. Meanwhile, if you're a J6er, you go to prison for 20 years. It's a double system. That's why it's like, how long can this stand, honestly? How long can this keep going on before the whole system breaks? Pinochet, Tupac spelled backwards is kaput. Nice. Nice. Good to see you, Pinochet. Tupac spelled backwards is kaput. What's going on? Schlista, talking about numbers? Talking about Viva. Man, it's good to see you. Well, we're very happy with our numbers. I absolutely love your show. It gives me in-depth info, what I need to know and need to do, and I enjoy doing my retirement. I retired when I was 51 and love trolling lefties, mostly on Facebook, but also on X and Truth as Mike's memes and crap posting. Nice. That's a handsome-looking gorilla. Facebook keeps banning my account, so I'm always starting over. Yeah, we're banned on Facebook too. Yeah, it's great. Good company. We're also banned over there. Hey, Baby Lewis, Rob, once the baby is here, you might not end the show with awesome shouting. You'll probably won't want to do when baby comes. You'll wake the baby. Well, our child needs to hear the Spotlight of Justice anthem so that they're properly raised with a love for America and justice. So you're probably right, though. We'll see. Friends, thank you for sending those in. Really appreciate the donos and the comments. Let's take a look at some friends on local, see what else we got cooking, and then we'll call it a day. Of course, we'll come back tomorrow and dig into it again. Rob, can you cover this upcoming court case? We already did. The Veil, already done. Swalwell is getting sued for disqualification. We hit that, did a full video on it, and it was a good one. Mom of Many said technical problems on the iPhone Locals app. Thanks for the report, Mom of Many. Sorry that you're having that happen. And the Veil saying the Bondi DOJ couldn't even give evidence of their complaint against Boasberg. Yeah, I know, they couldn't. How hard is it to provide evidence? Phone call, flash drive, anything? Apparently, it's very, very difficult to do that. Hey, this came in over from our friend Elliot. Hey, what's up, Elliot? Doc Master in the house says, here's the link for tomorrow's 9th Circuit live stream of oral arguments about the DOJ effort to allow Sigal Chattah to continue to call the shots of the Office of the U.S. Attorney in Nevada. Amazing. That's awesome. Calendar and the screenshot. So this is about... Wow. Okay. Yep. Another disqualification case. I'm going to guess this person's going to get disqualified. It's happening everywhere. Halligan got disqualified. We'll see. They appealed that. We just did a video on that. Comey and Latish cases being appealed now. It's basically about Lindsay Halligan. So that's coming tomorrow. Interesting. So thank you for that. Doc Master Elliot in the house. Great to see you again. Hopefully all the documenting is going well over there. This old guy says, 32 years in the telecommunications industry. I can tell you that of all the most major carriers in the marketplace, Verizon is the single worst carrier to deal with bar none. They do everything differently from everyone else. It's no surprise they screwed up the response on the congressional phone subpoenas. Interesting, this old guy. Yeah. Yeah, and they seem like a bunch of lefties over there too. AT&T didn't give out the records. Verizon did. Now they have an FCC complaint. Now their CEO is getting ridiculed in Congress, as they should. Thank you for that, this old guy. And my friends, thank you for being here and joining us on the day. Baby Lewis said, Rob, it was a joke. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Sometimes I may, what's the word? Deadpan humor. Maybe that's what it is. I take your joke and then act like it's real, you know, and then respond to it because I think it's funny, but apparently it's not. All right, I'll work on it. My friends, it's been a beautiful stream. Let's say what's up to our friends on X, then we'll call it a day. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow. See if we have any other news on the day. Today was an Epstein disaster. Total nonsense. Repeatedly. Oh, and X, I don't think we're streaming on there today. Yeah, we're not streaming. There was a error. We got an error. X said they're not publishing our live stream today. So I saw that come through. Anyways, so friends on X, sorry we missed you. If you're over there, don't think you are because I don't think it's published there. X is having a little live stream technical difficulties today. But my friends, it has been a beautiful day and a beautiful stream. Thank you for joining us. The Rubos in the house. Nice to see you. Zone Girl, great to see you. Baby Lewis. Dan in the house. Good to see you, C. Reed. The Veil is saying the case happens in March. Yeah, but the lawsuit already occurred, right? The lawsuit has been filed. We covered it. So there'll be more developments in March, but we can't cover what happens in March because it's not March yet. So we covered the lawsuit that was ultimately filed. Neuro D says you are live on X. You just don't have a post. That's kind of weird. How can that be? I don't know. Thank you for that, Neuro D, but I got a notice of that. Yeah, when I went live, X said problem. Donut, good to see you. We got 57 Ranger, nice to see you. We got Badass Dudes on Rumble, Ad Boa. What's up, Putrid Fetindini in the house. J-Ma, good to see you. Shout out to our friends watching on Rumble. Nice to have you there. Thank you for being over there and watching us. We got Just Rhonda. Thank you, Just Rhonda. Dark Servient in the house. Mama Pillow. Nice to see you, Ken Krause. What's up, Doan? Dan Link is here. LS is here. What's up, LS? Says AT&T is just as bad. Jane Farouch. What's up, Jane Farouch? Rachel Kara. What a lovely day. All right, so my friends, it's been a beautiful stream. We'll pause here for the night. We're coming back tomorrow. Members, we'll be back in the morning. Thank you for joining and supporting our work there. We'll see you once we're back here. Otherwise, my friends, it's going to be Thursday, and we're coming back to get into it again. Before we close out the day, big thank yous to our mods and our amazing meme smiths who keep things nice and beautiful. and orderly around here. Thank you go out to Muffin Rando, to Donut Mind Me. We got John in the house. Thanks to K Bean and to Carrie B. We got Neuro D, Janek, Dog Digger, Geegum Geegum, Elliot, and Just Rhonda locking the fort down for us, keeping things nice and orderly. But we'll pause here for the night. I hope you, I think I had a little lullaby to sing us off to so we can all just sleep so beautifully well tonight. Look at this one right here. I hope everybody has as peaceful a rest as Jerry Nadler did today during the hearing with Pam Bondi. Here's Jerry. Hopefully you sleep this soundly. Sweet dreams, my friends. I hope you have the most pleasant rest you can possibly imagine, and that you join us back here tomorrow to get into it again, because in order to do it appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well, just like Jerry Nadler. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. You brought the heat with every chatting line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through the scripted ruse. Together we are watching the watchers shine in the light. Watching the watchers defending what's right. Watching the watchers stay